Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to join today.
My pleasure.
No, it's great. You just recently changed positions, but you're still, your career has been mostly on the export side of the house.
100%. So for the last 18 years, I've worked for a variety of exporters, most recently the largest exporter in the US. And today I lead the logistics team and supply chain team at a frozen proteins exporter as well. So 100% exporter. We're doing a little bit of imports now on the wine and spirit side, but yeah. So I have a very focused exporter focus outlook. And the issues that affect me and are of interest to me are generally what exporters face and the impediments that we face as well. So
yeah, so I'm curious about how you have seen. We've had a crazy year. We've had a lot of geopolitical issues. When you're an exporter, you probably are facing that differently than the import community that maybe worries about their supply chain lines. You're worried about your ultimate buyers.
Exactly. Our planning cycles are as long as 100 days. So from the time a customer puts in an order to the time it's executed, that's probably about 35 days. And then depending on the market we're shipping to, which, if you're going to sub-Saharan Africa, it can be in 60 plus days of transit. It is a very long cycle. And in that cycle, multiple things happen. Multiple transit ports are touched. There's congestion. There's other issues. And then, of course, when the product arrives, being that today we're in it's food and beverage, essentially, there could be potentially geopolitical issues that affect not only the product, but also the condition of the product when it arrives. So it's a very different landscape today. It's the most sensitive landscape I've ever been exposed to in all my career.
So how do you see, because now you're changed, now you're in this food space, this ag space compared to maybe other export products.
Correct.
So how do you see in that space, the product viability is a big issue, right? You said frozen protein, so reefer temperatures, all this kind of stuff is probably a whole new world for you, perhaps.
It is. It's huge. Never thought about temperatures and condition. In all my career, the product was essentially, it was not sensitive to temperature at all. And today it's very sensitive. And we also not only do we containers, we do break bulk. So we're also putting proteins in a vessel directly, as you know, break bulk, and shipping it to, parts of Africa that, the entire vessel is sensitive now. And these ships are taking it in one go, essentially. Right. So the customer is buying, 5, 6, 7,000 tons in one go. So it's a very different landscape.
So how does that affect how you look at partnerships? How do you pick I'll call them, and you might call them suppliers or your partners, but whether it be ocean carriers or motor carriers, what goes into the evaluation? Yeah,
so as we all know, the word partnership, awfully misused. But in my world, the best partnerships are, my old world, we call them virtuous cycles of mutual benefit, but really it has to be mutual benefit.
Okay.
And if I look at negotiation as a zero-sum game, and if you're a vendor and I'm, a buyer of freight or whatnot, and if I look at it as a zero-sum game, that's not a good partnership. In fact, arguably, that's not a long-term partnership. Mm-hmm. And if we are to do business for the long term, and if we are to take care of my business and be a good custodian of my business long term, it's my duty to ensure that you're not only profitable, but this is a good relationship for you. And in essence, you choose me as a vendor versus me choosing you based on price. And if all we're talking about is price, that's a very transactional relationship.
Yep.
And for me, we've tried very hard to get away from that. In a trading world, from where I came from, a manufacturer world, the manufacturer world, we lived and breathed those relationships. In a trading world, we are a lot more nimble, and we have to be a lot more flexible. This is even more pronounced to have these relationships here, because if you can read, or you can pivot a little bit in my business where, let's say, the market changes, or a market might shut our product down, for example. So we might have product on the water. A market might say, okay, this particular product from this particular part of the US is now banned. And we have this all the time in the protein world because of avian influenza and other disease. How do we work together when that's on the water? How do you give me options? How do you minimize the costs on the water for me so I can still be profitable with that. Because long term, if I'm not profitable, I won't be a customer of yours.
Very
and
fair.
The best vendors say, look, we're not looking at this cycle, we're looking at multiple cycles because you will make us whole down the road. And this mutual cycle that goes back and forth, I believe, is extremely beneficial. And it's often misused, the partnership, but I've seen it pay so many dividends when taken care of, and if you're custodians of each other's business.
So ability to help you in difficult times is a key part of what a partner means to you.
And vice versa.
Okay.
When markets are bad, we have actually have done this in the past where we've leaned in with vendors who said, this is a very tough cycle for us. We may not be able to give you what you want. We may need you to potentially leave a little money on the table, but that cycle will come back and benefit you down the road. We've done that because we want you to be around down the road. We want you to be around the next year, the year after. And as long as that cycle continues and we remember what we've done for each other, it's going to be a great relationship. But we have to look multiple cycles down. We cannot look at just that negotiation cycle.
Makes sense.
You know.
So what are you looking at in, let's say, the rest of the contract year or in front of you? You know, what's worrying you?
Yeah, so with a contract, it's funny. I might have pulled out a contract probably 2 or 3 times in my career. Most times it's, we're in trouble or you're in trouble. We need to talk. As long as we understand what our business will look like down the road. And many times that's not always clear. So my policy has always been to be as clear and transparent to the best of my abilities. And things will change. And as long as our vendors are able to look at the band of what we're doing and say, okay, within this, I'm able to take care of you, we're good to go. And I think we try to put the upper and lower limits of how bad and good things can be. And in terms of volume. So if I'm going to be 50% plus, and I know that that's the maximum I'll be in terms of a surge, depending on the market, I'll tell you. And I expect that relationship will continue where you tell me where, hey, look, I can only take so much of what you give me. You may want to look at other people if you surge higher than this. That's great. You know, you don't have to be everything to us, but we have to be very honest and clear about what we can and cannot do for each other. And that in the negotiation cycle is very clear early on. So when the contracts are built, you know, number one, you don't have to pull them out, but number two, you don't have to ever say, well, you didn't service my business. So vice versa, the volume never materialized because you were clear from the get-go what you can and cannot do. Now, sometimes, you know, we talk about these black swan events. They're awfully too many these days.
That would mean they're not really a black swan event.
That's right. That's right. They're becoming awfully common. Those things are exceptions. But most times, I would say, most things are you can anticipate them, and you're able to give your vendors a lot of runway. And the contract should be based on that, not on something that's not attainable, which I often find when a contract is wanting or you feel a contract is unfulfilled, well, you never really set it up well to begin with.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very fair.
Yeah.
So what comes next?
Well, you know, I think looking at, you know, as an exporter, we benefit a lot from what the importers are doing. So if imports are booming as they are, even though we are in a niche, which is reefer, equipment's been fairly good. I would say the rates have been probably the most competitive we've seen them in a while. Trucking, which you know you're part of, has been fairly competitive. And when I say competitive, it's been soft. So we've benefited a lot from the import cycle, and we continue to benefit from what the importers do. So being a very major import market in the U.S., we don't have the same pressures that an importer has. As an exporter, all we're concerned about is do we have the right equipment? Are ocean freight and truck freights stable? That's what we like. And does U.S. policy promote the exports that we're trying to push? And as long as the trade policies are fair and the playing field is level, we do fine. And I think as U.S. exporters, we have some really good markets that we continue to ship to. Now, China was a big topic today at one of the panels I've on. There's been a conscious decoupling, I would say, a little bit on the import side. On the export side, we were very badly hurt by the trade war in 2016 to 2020. That's since recovered. But we believe if you get back into another tariff cycle, that's going to be very detrimental to U.S. exporters. And on the food and beverage side, we would feel a direct hit from that.
Yeah, makes sense.
So this year is a lot of questions. We'll get to the election. if you have policy that's stable, I think next year will be great. U.S. exports should be primed for some really good increases. But we'll see. We never know. I mean, with the Red Sea crisis, the Panama Canal water crisis, and so a few other issues, it's been very tricky to plan your supply chain. And COVID probably gave us a level of resiliency that we never thought we had. We came out of that, saying nothing really phases us. But there's been a few challenges this year that we didn't see, and hopefully those next year they will not get worse.
Well, here's my promise. I will call you next year. I'll ask you to come back on and
Okay.
tell us how it's looking then.
I'm here.
All right. Well, thanks for coming by.
Such a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.